Yeah. So I mean, that's just kind of the summation of that. I mean, we can go if there's anything in one of those in particular you want to talk about, we can. But essentially, um, if you're gonna start your own local reading group, you know, you gotta have plan the first organizing meeting as to how dates and times and where, and then choose the reading items you want to do. Um, each session, you know, have maybe some sort of agenda, how to publicize those things, maybe a reading guide as to what the items you're talking about. Um, and then, yeah, running the session itself is, you know, maybe pick someone or a few people to facilitate, depending on how you want to do this group. You may be a facilitator for that one day, or choosing a facilitator for a series of days on the one text or more. But I'm going to leave that to Garrett now about stack, because anyone who's facilitating, one of the things that is key for any facilitation process is stacking. I'm going to have Garrett talk about that a little bit more.
Can I jump in here real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the, I mean, planning the organizing meeting is like the first step, right?
Yeah.
So I just want to like kind of say like how I might go about this, and I would love to hear your guys' insight because you're definitely the pros here. So as a student at UCLA, I'm, you know, involved in a pretty wide net of things, and I know a few people that are definitely on board with this sort of politics. With like reaching out to those people and then kind of like have like a central core group of people that are kind of focused on organizing this whole thing. Say like, you know, I'm involved in the Hillel at UCLA research club, and like those are the two big things, and a couple of those kind of just like, you know, reaching out to those people that I know would be interested, and kind of saying like, oh, I want to start a reading group. Would you be interested in coming to this meeting and discussing how we might do that? Is that like first meeting? How do you focus a reading group and find something that everyone agrees on to be the focus? Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, as Garrett has up here, I mean, this is pretty much like the rundown of what you're just talking about. So if you have a core group, I mean, that's how I would start, is having that core group, and then bring in those who are interested in participating, you know, because that core group is that going to be that group that kind of sets a tone for the group that you're going to run. And then that's kind of, I mean, so you can have the core group like pick the readings. If you want to do something a little bit more democratic, not saying the core group wouldn't be democratic, but something a little bit more democratic, is the core group pick the books and say, okay, here's what our texts are, what say you, you know, and you can, there's an online voting platform called OPA Vote, which does a ranked choice voting for you. You can do it that way. You can do an email, send an email, like, you know, email the choices, and that's then we're going to pick. So whatever that democratic process you want to choose is, you want to do with that. And then, yeah, daytime and location. And if you're doing on campus, I have not been to UCLA, but for my friends who have, my understanding is that it's huge. And so maybe something central located, or I guess I tell radical students that if you want to go to places that make sense for you, go ahead. But I would shy away from places that would, how should I say this? Places that won't signal off certain people, like, why are these radical students coming together? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, UCLA actually has a wide variety of like common areas that you can book out. So it actually, yeah, and that's like really centralized. So those would be a good, you know, set of places to try to organize from.
Yeah, and I guess and I say that because my experience is like over at University of Chicago, where it's like, yeah, I don't think meeting at the Milton Friedman School of Economics is the best choice to go to, but that's just you. I mean, that's just me. But go ahead. Um, I'm just saying. So any common areas, a libraries, or anything in the community in LA that y'all feel would be worthwhile, then yeah. Also on here, whatever you want to start, an email list, create a little Facebook group. If you want to use Slack, use Slack. Discord, if you want to use Discord. And then also make the decision if you want to do it in person or use like Zoom or 8x8 or whatever video conferencing platform you want to use. Especially those, especially trying to make them more accessible for those who want to attend but can't come in person also.
Mm-hmm.
What else, Garrett?
Yeah, I think that covers most of the setup. You were talking, Jordan, about inviting people from a few different groups. And I think that would be great to kind of have a planning meeting with them to invite maybe like a representative of each group to kind of get together. And, are they all like focused on roughly the same topic? Like, are they all socialist groups, or do they have different focuses? Because like picking a topic that might be interesting across all of those spectrums,
Yeah.
helps a lot.
One of the big political points that I've been getting involved with on campus is specifically to do with Israel-Palestine.
Okay.
And I do know a lot of Jews on campus who are pretty already politically active on that front. So being like finding a way to tie that to this other club that I'm more or less going to be leading over the next year, which is focused on like a very scientific like praxis kind of. We're working on building a system that takes styrofoam and remediates it and we're feeding it to mealworms and all these other things. And it's so it's like really interesting to a lot of different like people that are interested in like how do I feel like I'm doing something to like fight global warming and all these other ecological issues, pollution. And so like that, those two groups would be like the primary people that I'm reaching out to likely. And so there's, it's definitely political.
Gotcha.
It's trying to figure out how to synthesize the present reality in Israel-Palestine while also discussing some of the topic is like definitely a big
well, see, this is where that slide on Haya Heller from the Institute for Social Ecology comes into play. That part of our first step here, our critical moment, is being very critical about what's going on in the world and trying to find these relationships between the different issues that even at first maybe don't even seem related. Like you're saying, how do you mix Israel and Palestine with climate change and styrofoam and things like that? But I can kind of see a connection here already where like most of Israel's military activity is funded and sponsored by the US government, for example. US military government, or the US military, is one of the biggest carbon polluters in the entire world. It generates way more than most countries. And not only that, but military bases tend to throw all kinds of toxic chemicals into the environment just by the nature of them being there. All of the equipment and technology and bombs and ammunition and things that they have, they leak all kinds of compounds into the environment. There's actually an airfield and a military base not very far from where I am. And they've detected PFAs and various plastics and all in our water supply. And that's been a thing going on nationwide where military bases have been using these plastic compounds. And, I'm thinking of like styrofoam and all toward what you're talking about. They've used it either directly for military related things, or they've used it as part of a component for like firefighting, like fire extinguishers and things like that. And so all these these chemicals are leaking from all these bases everywhere, into people's water supplies and all these things. And so there's kind of the direct military colonialization aspect of Israel and Palestine, but I bet all of those military bases and things around there are also leaking chemicals and toxins and all that into the region.
Yeah.
So looking at the relationships between that, I think would potentially be interesting for those groups.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I want the focus to the reading group or discussion group to be, is trying to link, as Bookton said, the social and the ecological crises, and to try to like really show people that they are, or at least help people make those connections themselves, that they are, inexorably linked. They're one and the same, and that, you can't deal with one without dealing with the other. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
that's all I know I want to talk about.
Well, I think that sounds like where you start then. It sounds like you approach the people from those other groups and kind of say exactly this. I see some connections between these things. Can we kind of put together a reading list? And you might even agree to kind of do like a survey. AJ had mentioned like a few magazines in these times, and Jacobin and things like that. You could probably search some of those magazines, see do they have any articles that are related to these issues. And once you start making a list, maybe you could agree on that and meet once a week or twice or every other week or something and go through that list. I think it would have to be kind of democratically planned like that. You'd have to get together and talk about it. But
would that, we mentioned earlier, like finding like that core group of people that are really taking charge and organizing this, would that be, democratically just within that group, or would you try to like organize it in such a way that it can kind of be fluid and change over time? Yeah. And I guess there's multiple ways of doing it.
Yeah, there's different ways. I would say probably the initial planning meeting could just be kind of a small core that you think is going to be really hyped up and interested and kind of have some time to dig into it. Because, like I mentioned, finding some readings that are related to the topics that you really want to dive into, that might take a little bit of effort and time to kind of do some research and find some things. But you can start with that core, and I think as the group goes on, as you read more things, it's important to make sure that everyone is heard and everyone is learning during the process. So even though it kind of starts with a core, once you get a few readings going, then you can ask new people that are coming in to say, do one of you have a suggestion on what a future topic might be? And do one of you want to be the facilitator that kind of oversees our next reading group, or and kind of manages it, I suppose, right? You want to, that way you're bringing in new people and everyone's kind of rotating through all the roles. Everyone is learning all the different parts of the process. So it's not stuck on a core. If it gets stuck on a core, there's risks where like maybe you're not bringing in new people, or even if you are, that core might get burned out. You might just feel like, oh, this has been so much work, I can't do it all myself. So you want to make sure that you're kind of rotating people in at a reasonable rate. But it's okay to start with the core, and when you're figuring out the very initials. AJ, you want to throw anything in?
No, you say exactly what I would have said. I mean, I think having that core group is good, and yeah, you can have that democratic process within that core group also. And then if you want to take it to a much larger group of those who are interested, then yeah, take it to them. I mean, any reading group has to be a democratic process. Because I've been in groups, it's like, we're gonna read this and nothing else. It's like, okay, we'll read it. I mean, I'm not gonna like it, but whatever. It's just not fun. And then it's like, being in college when you have that one professor who wants to have you read a social justice book that has a very Frederick Hayek theme to it. And you're like, I go, why are we reading this book? I mean, this makes no sense. But here I am at a Catholic university, or whatever. I'm sorry, I'm digressing. It's flashbacks for me.
Personal experience.
Yeah.
I have one question on that like reading list. I have a couple books that have this is one that I picked up recently. the uncommon ground. It's really focused in on, if you're unfamiliar, it's focused in on like trying to understand the like human aspect that is our understanding of nature, like the popular understanding of nature kind of. And it's broken up into essays. But I was curious, like, should you be trying to keep it like something that somebody can just like pick up and read in an hour or less? Or should it be like, I mean, I guess it really depends on the level of commitment you're asking for, but
So
how open should you be trying to make it?
so I guess I see it in two different ways. So one of the examples that we have show on this presentation slide,